This is Ferris Khan with Michigan Football at the Voice of College Football. Today on Smash the Numbers, we're actually going to do logic, facts, and a little bit of numbers. And we're going to go into detail on the ESPN report for the draft version of the notice of allegations and what that means to Michigan. I'm going to read the draft. I'm going to kind of provide some commentary. I also watched several other YouTube videos on this topic. I'm going to make some quotes or paraphrase some other YouTubers, and I'm going to give my response. Now, this is the response from a Michigan fan. I do admit that, but I think what's in the notice of allegations, I'm just going to summarize it right up front. There isn't anything that has really pushed new ground to the point where it would change my thinking that Connor Stalions was probably a lone wolf and he acted on his own. And there should be repercussions for that, but it should not be at the same level as if the entire staff knew and supported what he was doing. All right, let's go to the ESPN article. I'm going to read it and I'm going to provide some comments, and then I'll go into some deeper discussion about what some other people have said. All right, here we go. I pulled up the article. I was originally going to actually show some video as well, but my piece is going to be way too long if I commentate on on video as well. Let's just read it right here. Michigan football coach Sherrone Moore violated NCAA rules. NOAA draft says. NOAA means notice of allegations. New Michigan head coach Sherrone Moore is one of 7 members of the 2023 football program accused of violating NCAA rules in a draft of the NCAA notice of allegations obtained by ESPN. All right, first thing I want to say is this is a draft. This is not the notice of allegations. There was some talk that there would be a notice of allegations as of sometime last week. We're not even to that point yet. We're in the draft mode right now. My understanding is that a draft can or sometimes is, or maybe it commonly is, shared with the university or with the university. The university is allowed to respond to that in case there's something that the NCAA says something like the allegations are going to be A, B, C, X, Y, Z, and the university can respond and say something to the effect that, hey, you know what, we can prove that out of A, B, C, X, Y, and Z, that A and C and Y, we can prove that what you're saying is not accurate. So if they can, before anything gets formalized, the notice of allegations can be tighter, fewer allegations, etc. Okay, so the draft. Okay, one other thing I would say, it says it's obtained by ESPN. I want to point out that this is the second time for just this case that information from the NCAA has been leaked to ESPN. And I'd like to know, as a Michigan fan, where the accountability is with the NCAA. Is there should there be a lack of institutional control when it comes to the NCAA? Why is information getting leaked to Peter, Dan Murphy and Peter Thamel? But this is the second time Peter Thamel has obtained information. Why is it being released to Pete Thamel before it gets to Michigan? Perhaps because there isn't much there, and this is a way to punish Michigan in the court of public opinion, even if the NCAA can't do it with actual facts, logic, reasoning, that sort of thing. So just a thought out there. Okay, so draft, which could be subject to change, so keep that in mind too. everything that's in here could be subject to change, and maybe that back and forth that I told you with Michigan could actually happen. States that Moore could face a show cause penalty and possibly a suspension for allegedly deleting a thread of 52 text messages. Okay, so my thought pattern here is, okay, if there's something that's really bad in those text messages, hopefully they find it and they see what it is, and that gets resolved, for the sake of justice. But it does appear that they did find it. All it was, as far there's varying reports out there, but from my understanding, all it was is that Moore put a bunch of text messages into a folder, a deleted folder, but he didn't, clear out the trash bin or whatever, and those messages were still on his phone. Many people might just delete text messages as they come in, or text messages that are a week old or whatever. Maybe in this case, Connor Stalions, and Sherrone Moore are not getting along at this point. Sherrone Moore thought that Connor Stalions was in the up and up. They're not friends anymore. So what's the point of keeping all the text messages? So he deleted them. I'm just trying to explain what the logic might be for somebody to do that. And it seems fairly sound to me. Many people delete all text messages. Is that bad? Should you keep a record of all text messages, et cetera, right? So anyway, it says the draft states that the texts were later recovered via device imaging. My understanding from other sources is that it's just simply, hey, it wasn't in the text. Check the deleted text. Oh, it's in the deleted text on his phone. Okay. Moore is accused of committing a level 2 violation. I want to point out here that if there was anything in the text, it wouldn't be a level 2 violation. It would be a level 1 violation. Okay. Moore took over as Wolverines head coach, maybe considered a potential repeat offender. Yeah, I think that is something to worry about. Although there is some overlap between what's known as Burgergate and this, in terms of timing. They were on probation for Burgergate. Is this a repeat offense? I do think that's something that to potentially worry about. What was Burgergate? It was basically buying cheeseburgers for recruits, as well as other COVID-19 recruiting dead period violations. Michigan served a 3-game suspension for that, or Jim Harbaugh did. Okay. So, and Sherrone Moore served a 1-game suspension. So, okay. So moving on here, the new allegations against Moore are part of a long anticipated notice of allegations related to Stalions' off-campus scouting operation. Former Michigan staff members Jim Harbaugh, Chris Partridge, Denard Robinson, and Stalions are accused of committing level 1 violations. So that's the more serious violations. Okay. So what was it? Was it an elaborate scheme? What exactly is causing the level 1 violations? Well, it is a pattern of non-compliance within the football program and institutional efforts to hinder or thwart NCAA's investigation. So, pattern of non-compliance within the football program, I'm not sure what to read into that, but the second half of the sentence, I think it means that they're not cooperating with the NCAA. And part of that might be that they had their foot out the door anyway. What's the point of cooperating? But I believe that's what it is. Okay. So, is it something that is actually a smoking gun that the NCAA found? I don't see anything there. I should also point out that maybe ESPN found the draft, but the actual version is coming. I guess the timing, maybe it's coming this week or something. Maybe the timing is more accelerated than we think. But if it's just the draft, let's talk about the timing for a second. If it's just a draft of the notice of allegation, then what we're talking about here is maybe I would think that Michigan might have a chance to respond to the draft. Then it gets kind of narrowed down. That response time might be on the order of I don't know, a week or two, something like that. The NCAA wraps up what they're doing. We're all already well into August. Uh, Michigan has 90 days to respond. So we're talking, September, October, November. So we're talking about probably the entire regular season that they have to respond, or almost all of the regular season to respond. We'll see what the exact timing is. But right now, as it stands, this notice of allegation doesn't seem like it's going to come in time for Michigan to get their 90 days and still be able to have the NCAA then again respond and say, here's the punishment. I also think that I don't think they can give a punishment in a notice of allegations, or a proposed punishment in a notice of allegations. So the reporting that there's going to be a 1 to 2 season bowl ban or something to that effect, I don't see how that can happen in a notice of allegation. Yeah, I think that's kind of in the, whatever you want to call it, the sentencing phase, so to speak. All right, so we keep going. A spokesman for the Michigan football team told ESPN, our athletic department and university continue to cooperate with the NCAA regarding our ongoing investigation. We do not have an update to share regarding its status at this time. Okay, I do want to point out that this is kind of unfair, because I'm sure people are going to say, oh, Michigan's, they get to say, we can't say anything. Well, they can't say anything. Meanwhile, the NCAA can leak things to Pete Thamel, apparently, with no repercussions. So just a thought there, right? So Harbaugh left Michigan to coach the Chargers. He's accused of not cooperating because he denied the NCAA request to view relevant messages and phone records from his personal cell phone. So that gives more credence to the idea that the level 1 violation is simply is the act of not cooperating, not the act of actually NCAA finding anything. The draft says Harbaugh could face a show cause restriction if he ever opts to return to college sports. Okay, I do want to point out one thing about Harbaugh. A lot of people are saying that he fled to the NFL. Okay, on the surface, okay, that sounds like something, okay, that might make sense. But let's think this through a little bit. He got $16 million per year for multiple years. I think 5 years at $16 million. He got complete control of an NFL franchise, and he got a franchise quarterback in Justin Herbert. So I would say 99 out of 100 coaches, maybe Chip Kelly might be the exception, 99 out of 100 coaches would take that deal that Harbaugh had. All right. So he got a better job offer. That's the bottom line. Now, what is a show cause? Show cause is kind of supposed to be almost like a blacklisted to a certain degree, or something like that, from getting future jobs, something to that effect. If Michigan's standing behind Sherrone Moore as it stands for the time of his show cause, if Sherrone Moore gets a show cause, it doesn't really matter. He can just sort of keep his job. That doesn't matter. It matters if he wants to get another job. Okay. But make no mistake, it is not a good thing to get a show cause. I would be surprised if Sherrone Moore would just accept a show cause. Okay. So the Big Ten suspended Harbaugh for final 3 games punishment. The draft. So that's okay. So the draft of allegation does not provide any evidence that Harbaugh was involved in the Stalions operation, or that he knew what was going on. I'll repeat that. The draft of allegations does not provide any evidence that Harbaugh was involved in the Stalions operations, or that he knew what was going on. So the very core of this, that there was some sort of elaborate scheme, there is no evidence of that, according to this draft. All right, so Stalions resigned in early November. The NCAA draft obtained by ESPN states that the investigators used ticket information, film, photographs, and interviews to determine that Stalions had impermissibly scouted at least 13 future opponents on at least 58 occasions between 2021 and 2023. He directed others to scout some opponents multiple times, including one team that they scouted 7 times in 2022, according to the draft. Okay, so what does this point to? It points to the idea of Stalions potentially hiring, I don't know who, but I'm going to just guess college students or people who, hey, I'll give you tickets and $100. Go record a game. Okay, so let's say that's what it is. All right. So Stalions hired somebody to do that with their iPhone. Um, I'm really into iPhone photography, and holding an iPhone still at 15x zoom, or 5x zoom, let's say, even 5x zooms is pretty shaky. But okay, so that's what he did. I mean, it's literally shaky, right? From 60 yards away or something. Um, so he did that. Let's say he did that. Okay, so he did that. He hired people. Why would he do that with his own money? Well, he's trying to look smarter than he actually was. He has a military intelligence background, and he's trying to impress people, basically. So if that's all it was, his the only last step for him is to convince everyone that because of his intelligence background, he's thinking a different way. Just some of the people around him, he just has this intuition that other people don't. Might be that he actually has information from uh, let's say college students recording games, or whatever, people he's hired recording games. Okay, these recorded incidents are coming from a let me just I'll remove this for a second just so I can kind of comment a little bit. These recordings are coming from public areas. There's 100,000 people in the stands, or 50, 80, whatever, 1,000 people in these stands, and virtually all of them, have cell phones. This rule was made in 1994 when no one had cell phones. The idea of everyone having a 4K cell phone in their pocket was absurd. People had like the VHS things over the shoulder kind of stuff, and it was very expensive to send staff to do that, to go to another game and to record things. Okay, so 1994 rule, the iPhone came out, I think, in 2009, 2008, 9. Didn't become really super popular where everybody had one until 2000, I don't know, 11 or 12 or something like that. So, we had the flip phones and the other stuff. So, uh, this is like an incomprehensible thing when the rule came down. So it's sort of like the rule at Harvard, where every professor is allowed to have 3 cows or something. It's something equivalent to that, if you want to look at it that way, right? So anyway, he did hire these people. Let's say he did that, and so now we're talking about these people, these college students, these random people that he hired, his friends or whatever they are, um, as advanced scouts recording for future games. Okay, so that's what they're doing. They're advanced scouts. So they're doing advanced scouting. The problem is, I don't think the NCAA has ever defined what an advanced scout is. And so I'm going to give you another example. And reportedly, allegedly, Ohio State, along with 2 other teams, were colluding together in a group chat / email thread or something to that effect. I don't know if they actually talked. Maybe they did. I'm not sure. To scout Michigan. So, in other words, tendencies, exact plays, stealing signs, all of that kind of stuff. 3 teams together, professionals, but they're helping each other, colluding together against Michigan. So if random people recording games from public areas is advanced scouting, are three teams, coaches from three teams, professional coaches. I mean, they're college sport, but they are professional coaches getting paid to coach, colluding with each other. Are they advanced scouts for each other? I don't think the NCAA has a response to that question because they did not define what an advanced scout is. So I do think there is a loophole for Michigan. Um, Also, by the way, an argument was made that for Michigan to Tony Petitti, which I don't really think Tony Petitti knows the game of football, um, college football. He was sort of influenced, and Tony Petitti is the commissioner of the Big Ten. There was an argument made that this was something that would potentially injure players, the knowing of signs. Well, would the knowing of signs via collusion of three teams together, would that injure players too? Maybe it would injure players more because these are professionals that are talking to each other. Okay, so that's my thought process. Let's go back to the article. Okay. All right, so I think we were right here. Investigators also allege that multiple interns and at least one other full-time employee knew about the scheme and participated in it. So it looks like I think they're defining Connor Stalions as an intern. So multiple. Oh, okay. Maybe he's not an intern, but there are interns that he interacted with. Okay. And at least one other full-time employee knew about the scheme and participated in it. The draft says that Stalions led those individuals to believe that what they were doing was not against the rules. So basically, it sounds like Stalions still, in my argument, that how can you prove that Stalions wasn't a lone wolf? Well, it does look like he's still a lone wolf here. He's just convincing a few people, lower level staffers. Well, I'm sorry, lower level interns and one staffer. We'll have to find out who that staffer was. That what he was doing was totally legal. And he probably went about it with confidence. And again, he has a military background, so maybe he had an aura of confidence with respect to this, right? So, actually, that's probably a good news thing for Michigan because it does not appear that this scheme was known by many. At least that's how I read it in terms of the evidence, right? The draft also states that the NCAA gathered evidence that shows Stalions was on the sideline at the Michigan State season opening game against Central Michigan in 2023. Stalions wearing a bench pass, Central Michigan coaching gear, and a disguise, according to the draft, which states that Stalions' conduct seriously undermined or threatened the integrity of the NCAA collegiate model. The draft does not say how Stalions obtained a bench pass for the Chippewa sideline. So, okay, so to me, what does this mean? Well, it means that Central Michigan is in trouble because it seems like they hired Stalions, or someone on the Central Michigan staff hired Stalions as a subcontractor for one game. That makes sense to me. And I don't know if I'm missing anything. I think maybe some people who would argue that somehow Stalions was spying for Michigan, it just doesn't make any logical sense to me. Why would he be on the sidelines in a CMU disguise with CMU gear that you can't buy at the bookshop or something? Somebody in CMU has to fit you and give you that gear, right? So maybe that was CMU's quarterback coach. I don't know, but this is something that is Stalions with CMU. It doesn't make any sense that this would be Stalions supporting Michigan. If he were supporting Michigan, then it wouldn't be him. He could subcontract somebody else or hire somebody else to do it. Or if he really wanted to be there, he could be there, but just go in the 10th row out of TV camera view where you can have a camera with a zoom lens and that would be a lot easier to do than whatever he was doing, right? So it seems like he was honing his craft in the CMU game to benefit CMU. I'm not sure why Michigan that got mentioned with Michigan, but I think that's one of those things in the draft versus the actual notice of allegations. If you see all of the CMU stuff go away, it's because Michigan probably explained that to them, that what this doesn't make any logical sense. Why would he just not be in the? Why would he even be in the sidelines? He could just buy a ticket, be 10 rows up, have a 30x zoom lens on a camera, pocket camera, and do what he's doing. Why would he need to be on the bench? Okay, so let's keep going. ESPN's attempts to reach Stalions for comments Sunday were unsuccessful. Maybe Stalions has an exclusive deal with Netflix. Maybe that's why. And by the way, I would like to, I'm not sure if I'm going to do this on my personal channel or on this channel, but I plan on watching the Stalions documentary and doing live commentary on it as I'm watching it. So I'm not going to share the screen. I can't do that for digital rights reasons, but I'll go through it as it's playing and give you some commentary. Okay. All right. Or at least that's my intent at this point. Let's keep going. The NCAA draft said Stalions failed to cooperate in this investigation. The draft states that in October of 2023, he removed hard drives from the Michigan football offices and also gave a football player a sheet containing play calling signals of a future opponent. It is said that Stalions asked the player to bring the sheet to a team intern's house until he could retrieve them later. Stalions also refused to let the school review his phone, according to the draft. Stalions has yet to publicly share many of the details of his his side of the story, but he's expected to be interviewed for an upcoming Netflix documentary about the scheme. Okay, so what does that mean? I mean, it just fits the lone wolf narrative that he had some information. It was on his computer. He took that hard drive that was connected to his computer. He had some kind of play sheet. He just quickly gave it to a player, and he asked the player to deliver it to an intern who maybe the intern still thought that Stalions was on the up and up or was still his friend or whatever, and he was going to pick that up from him later. We'll see how much Stalions talks to Netflix, but it would be very strange if there's information in Netflix that the NCAA doesn't have, and etc. So we'll see. So there's also Partridge, a former defensive assistant who was fired by Michigan last November, is accused of pressuring a player to lie or mislead to investigators in an effort to protect the coaching staff during a probe into Stalions' scheme, according to the draft. Okay, so what did Partridge do? I think there's two sides to the story. Nobody got to really delve deeper into the Partridge part of this. It may be that he said, "Don't go beyond the question that was asked," and saying that alone to players and other coaches or whatever, saying that alone is something that made the NCAA upset. Or it could be that he did something more. Maybe we'll never know. But that's, I guess that's the end of that story because Partridge isn't talking. And if he had a bone to pick with Michigan, you would think that he would be talking, right? So let's keep going. Partridge, Klingsdale, and Robinson are all accused of providing impermissible benefits to a recruit in 2023. So basically what they're doing is they're sort of weaving in the idea that there are other things involved. Also, Klingsdale and Minter are mentioned. Partridge and former defensive coordinator Jesse Minter are accused of level 2 violations for sending text messages to a recruit who is a high school sophomore. So what they're weaving in, is they are name dropping Jesse Minter, who is a defensive coordinator. And if he knew, this would be a much bigger thing than it is from an NCAA perspective, or if it could be proved that he knew. they're name dropping Jesse Minter, but what they're name dropping is Jesse Minter text message a recruit, not that Jesse Minter was directly aware of what Connor Stalions was doing. Okay, I'm going to stop there for a second. I do have a couple other notes. All right. Well, we're already 30 minutes into this. We're already 30 minutes into this. So I want to, originally before this news came out, I was preparing for this and I was going to do this as a reaction video to Ohio State football at the Voice of College Football, one of their videos, which posted, I believe, on Friday with Steve and Tony. I'm going to go ahead and Mark was hosting it. I'm going to go ahead and post a link to that video, but I think a lot of what they said was very interesting. So I just wanted to kind of give you some running commentary. I was going to kind of share the details of that, but I'm going to verbalize it since we're 30 minutes here in, and I'm going to just kind of summarize it. So so Steve mentioned we're kind of in a wait and see mode. I totally agree with that. He was wondering why it's taken 9 months to get to a resolution. I think it's because the lack of cooperation and also the NCAA is very slow in general. Steve mentioned there is a notice of allegations that is coming and Michigan is ready to fight. I think that was what a reporter wrote, a Michigan reporter wrote. And he said that if it's an open and shut case, for example, I think he used a metaphor that if I'm driving or if he's driving 83 miles an hour in a 70 mile an hour zone, he doesn't have a leg to stand on. Though these are the facts, open and shut case. Well, my response to that is that actually in that kind of situation, you agree, a lot of times what happens is you agree to a lesser charge, you do pay a fine, but your insurance rates don't go up. And that's a very typical thing that happens in an actual traffic court. And that might be the kind of situation that happens here. Also, we don't actually know what Michigan did. It's a lot different if Connor Stalions did something and everybody knew versus he acted alone, maybe convinced a couple people that that what he was doing was totally fine. And then that's it, right? So Tony actually mentioned that Central Michigan has fired as many people. I'm looking over here to kind of see my notes here. Central Michigan has fired as many people as Michigan. They let go of their quarterback coach. And I would say, yeah, I mean, that's Central Michigan might be in deeper water than Michigan is. Tony also mentioned that they have stated, or Michigan has stated, that they would fight every step of the way, or they had stated last year. And every time it came back to see, or they saw the evidence, they backed down. That was, I'm just kind of paraphrasing. They did not put up a fight once the evidence was presented to them. Okay, on the surface, I think that argument makes some sense, but you have to look at actually, what happened behind the scenes. I think there was some level of a negotiation there that happened behind the scenes. I think someone at Michigan said, look, if we just simply give Harbaugh the 3 games, let us keep playing. We're already, 8-0, 9-0, whatever it was when they were doing this negotiation. Just let us keep playing out this season. We'll just do the 3 games with Harbaugh. Just let us keep playing. We don't have time to fight this at the same time that we are trying to have an undefeated season. So it makes total sense in that case of they just didn't have the bandwidth to fight. I do think they have the bandwidth to fight now. And if there's anything that's bigger than something really small, a small hammer, I do think that they're going to fight. So I disagree with Tony on that point, that just because they didn't fight, maybe they actually did fight in the fall and they got what they wanted. They got the ability to play in the Big Ten title game and the ability to play in the playoffs as long as Harbaugh just took the 3 games. And so I do think they might have been fighting behind the scenes, Tony, on that one. There was some talk in their discussion that if Michigan starts off 3-2, they would self-impose a postseason ban to try to get ahead of this. It's not a bad idea. I mean, I think maybe, but I don't know if there's going to be a postseason. I don't think it's going to come to that. I don't think based on the um, draft version of the notice of allegations, there isn't that much there other than the idea of the repeat offender, perhaps. But it's a logical thought. But the other thing I'll say is that um, if this actually happens, there would be a virtual asterisk against Michigan's name, and I think for that reason, even if they start off 3-2, I think they're going to fight it. Um, I know there are penalties being talked about. So this is kind of a little quote here. I know there are penalties being talked about that are not going to be part of the notice of allegation. So the point there is that original report talked about penalties, but I don't think that's associated with the notice of allegations. I think there's kind of like here's the notice, here's the response, then after all of that, there is the actual penalty, and that happens much later. Michigan has 90 days to respond, then the NCAA has 90 days to respond. Add that up, unless the NCAA is super fast, there's no way that this is all going to happen within the 2024 season. They did talk a little bit about legal stuff. That's where you really get in trouble if you get into kind of like the legal world instead of just the NCAA world. And I would say yes, that is true. And actually, that's true of the NCAA, maybe more so than Michigan. Tennessee took the NCAA into the U.S. courts, and the NCAA did not fare well. This is the kind of thing, a high profile case like this, that could risk the NCAA's existence, period. So when we're talking about legal stuff where you could get into trouble, it kind of works both ways, and maybe more so on the NCAA side. The penalties, kind of are these penalties kind of stacking or different than the recruiting violations or whatever? Um, that's there is a question about being on probation and then doing this, or did this happen before the probation, or what? That is something that does need to be resolved. So I will say that. Steve quoted someone saying, I hope the attorneys that we get to fight this are better than the ones we had last November. So he quoted, I think a commenter. I think this situation is different, as I pointed out. In November, there was extreme urgency because Michigan was winning every game, and they really had a legitimate chance to go undefeated and get to the playoffs. They talked about something is coming, and we don't know what. And I do completely agree. We don't know if it's going to be big or small, but based on the signals, it does look like it's small outside of that probation thing. I do want to point out Jim Harbaugh did want to fight 2 suspensions, and he, Tony mentioned he did want to fight 2 suspensions, and he ended up not fighting them. That's true, but was it he or was it the university? My understanding is that that Jim Harbaugh really did want to fight to clear his name, so to speak, and he was overruled by the university. So that's a little bit different. He did not have a perfect relationship with U of M when he left. So I think we all know that. And I think a large part of that is that the fact that he did want to fight. Mark was talking about would there be forced vacated wins? The cheating, quote unquote cheating, is directly related to performance. I don't see how you can vacate wins based on the evidence that we have here. So that would be very difficult. We'll see, but that would be very difficult. And if they do, they're going to court. If they go to court, the NCAA is risking a lot. I think more than Michigan is with taking this to court. That previous, there was some talk from Tony about the previous thing and this thing. They're dragging their feet on both. Maybe that's the case, but there isn't an aura of cooperation between the NCAA and Michigan, and that might be part of it. There's some talk about the bowl eligibility, and James Madison was brought up because they're a first year. They kind of moved up, and in the first year they're not eligible for bowls. Wouldn't Michigan kind of be in the same category if they're not? If the NCAA says they're not eligible, then they wouldn't be eligible for the playoffs because they wouldn't be ranked in the playoff system. Yeah, perhaps we'll cross that bridge when we get to it. I don't think we are going to get to it. Um, Mark had a really good point, and that was is the act of cheating and the impact of cheating. There isn't really any consensus of what that is on the field, knowing signs. But I will say, if teams are colluding with each other to come up with signs, that seems just as bad or worse than trying to record other teams playing and then deciphering that, because not only do you get the signs, you also get the expertise from other coaches on tendencies and things like that. They're really acting as advanced scouts for each other. Mark talked about Deflategate, which was kind of an interesting comparison. And Tom Brady did get some penalty for that. I did think that was cheating. You know, that the altering equipment for a game is cheating. um, Now, Mark mentioned, okay, why did Brady do it? There's only one reason to cheat. Kind of was the commentary as they were kind of talking about this. You go and watch the video, you'll see what I'm talking about. And this is the Ohio State football at the Voice of College Football. Check the link below for more details. Um, Actually, I'm thinking Stalions had a very specific reason to quote unquote cheat. He wanted to make himself look better than he was. So the lone wolf argument that it was Stalions acting alone makes total sense. There was a reason to do it. It was to benefit Stalions' own career. Mark mentioned, and he did say, he couched this by saying, I might be wrong, but there's no way Connor Stalions did this as a rogue individual. Does not make any sense. Actually, kind of makes sense. I do see how he might have told some interns or maybe convinced a couple people here or there, but it makes logical sense because he wanted to make U of M leadership in the football program think that he was smarter than he was. Somebody with a military background who might think differently than everybody else, have a different view, is able to decipher signals in a different way or something to that effect. That makes sense. Yeah. So just some thoughts there. Mark did also point out one other thing that was interesting. If a CEO has no idea that this was a rogue employee, you do still have to take the hit for that. So if this is known by other coaches, defensive coaches, for example, you do have to take the hit for that. That's worse than if it's a rogue employee that's just doing their thing. So rogue employee doing their thing, not too many other people know about it. At the leadership level, still have to take a hit for it, no doubt. If other people knew, that's worse. But so I completely agree with that. So there should be some punishment, but what is the level of punishment if there's nothing that can be proven beyond the rogue employee? That's the question, right? All right. So I think those are the main points. I just want to kind of cover that. I watched a lot of other YouTube videos today, and I come out with the idea that this is kind of a net positive for Michigan because it's a draft of the notice of allegations. It seems like everything's going to shrink a little bit, draft and then actual. And even in the draft, the worst thing there is Sherrone Moore violated or deleted a bunch of text messages after the fact. But apparently, those text messages are known, and there's nothing that is really that bad in the text messages. So, okay, he was clearing his folder of somebody that Michigan fired. to me, that makes sense, but maybe to you that you think that that's something that's really bad. So the other thing is I do not see just with the timeline, any way that this could impact the 2024 season. And then finally, I do think the NCAA has something to lose here. So it is not just Michigan, if this goes into the court system, that's going to be in trouble potentially. I think the NCAA might be in even worse shape if they actually lose in court. I mean, it might signal the end of the NCAA as we know it to 2024, which is certainly not like what it was in 2014, for example. Thank you for getting to the end of this video. I hope it was value added for you. I'm just using facts and logic to state my case that it does really appear that the idea that Connor Stalions was a lone wolf makes sense. If you are a Michigan fan, or if you just want to watch this channel, what I'd like you to do is please become a subscriber. We have 7.67 thousand, so 7,600, almost 7,700 subscribers. Our channel is newer than the Ohio State at the Voice of College Football channel, which has 8,350 subscribers. We are 680 behind them, but we're moving fast, as you can see with this Kenneth Grant tracker. We hope to catch Ryan Day by the Texas game. So we'll continue to put out content. We are there almost every day of the week with some type of content. And we'll continue to do that throughout the season. The over-under right now is the Texas game. We want to be able, second game of the year, we want to be able to move ahead of Ohio State at the Voice of College Football by the Texas game. We've got 680 subscribers to go. If you like this content, if you could please first go ahead and please, and then also subscribe. I would appreciate it. I appreciate it on behalf of the channel. Have a great day and a great work week.